Welcome, dear listener, to another quiet journey into the past. Today, we will wander through the slow, often overlooked moments of history, the ones that shaped lives, ideas, and the world we know. Quietly and without fanfare. Here, time moves gently. We will linger in workshops, libraries, and sunlit streets, following ordinary people performing extraordinary acts of patience and care. So find a comfortable place, let your mind settle, and allow the stories of centuries past to unfold, slowly, like pages turning under candlelight. This is boring past times for sleep where history whispers, and you can drift into the calm rhythm of the past. The morning air in the Maya lowlands is thick with humidity, a subtle mix of forest scents, damp earth, and the faint, lingering aroma of fermenting cacao. The village is still quiet, though not completely silent. Somewhere, a rooster's caw echoes faintly across the clearing, signaling a day that will be measured in minutiae as much as in hours. If you were standing among the cacao groves at this hour, would notice the seemingly trivial details of daily life, the way dew clings to the leaves of the cacao pods, the soft rustle of a breeze through the slender branches, the methodical movements of the farmers tending to the soil. It may appear, from an outside perspective, that little of consequence occurs here. Yet, it is precisely in these mundane patterns that the Maya constructed a rhythm of life, intertwined with the sacred and the practical, particularly through the ritualized use of cacao. In the time of the classic Maya civilization, was far more than a mere crop. It was a measure, a medium of communication, and a marker of time. The average Maya farmer would awaken before sunrise, guided not by the mechanical tick of a clock, which did not exist in this context, but by the changing colors of the sky and the subtle alterations in the environment that hinted at the day ahead. Their senses, honed by generations of observation, allowed them to detect when the first light had passed over the canopy, casting long, hesitant shadows across the plantation. It was during this period that cacao rituals, modest, precise, and quietly repetitive, would take place, quietly signaling the start of work and structuring the day in ways both practical and symbolic. The process began with selecting the appropriate cacao beans for the morning's drink. This was not an arbitrary choice. Some beans were designated for special ceremonial purposes, others reserved for trade, and still others kept strictly for daily sustenance. Farmers would gather beans with a care that might seem excessive to an outsider. They would inspect each pod, noting the shape, the firmness of its exterior, and the subtle variations in hue. A pod that was slightly overripe or underdeveloped would be set aside. This seemingly trivial sorting process was, in fact, an essential method of ensuring consistency in both flavor and ritual timing. The quality of the cacao was intimately linked to the efficiency of the morning routine, as well as to the spiritual resonance of the drink. Once selected, the beans were removed from their pods and fermented under banana leaves or within rudimentary wooden containers for several days, a process that would develop their characteristic flavors. Fermentation, while scientifically understandable today, was experienced by the Maya primarily through observation and patience. Farmers noted the subtle changes in aroma, the slight warmth of the fermenting mass, and the textures of the beans. These markers, learned and passed down over generations, indicated the precise moment when the beans were ready to dry. Drying took place in the sun, on carefully prepared mats, or on rooftops. The meticulous timing of this drying process was critical. Too long, and the beans would lose their richness. Too short, and they remained bitter and unsuitable for the morning rituals that punctuated village life. By the time the sun crested fully above the horizon, the village was awake, and the first cacao drink of the day was being prepared. This drink was not merely for pleasure. It was a form of temporal orientation. As you, hypothetically, sitting on a woven mat at the edge of the plaza, would notice, the ritual consumption of cacao established a shared temporal framework. When the first sip was taken, it marked the beginning of labor, the signal that the day's tasks tending crops, repairing structures, or engaging in minor trade were to commence. In this way, cacao became a living chronometer, a daily measure of hours and cycles, deeply embedded in the mundane and the sacred alike. The preparation itself was methodical, a procedure honed over countless mornings. The dried beans were roasted over carefully controlled fires. The temperature, judged by the color of the beans and the aroma emanating from the roasting vessel, had to be precise. Too much heat would char them, too little would leave the drink weak and unremarkable. Once roasted, the beans were ground with stone tools, a labor-intensive process that required rhythm and patience. Grinding, in this context, was not only a method of preparing food, but a meditation in motion, a moment where attention to detail signaled both respect for the crop and anticipation for the day ahead. Water, or occasionally maize-based liquids, was added, and the mixture stirred with wooden wands or whisks, producing a foamy consistency valued by the drinkers. The significance of this foam, though seemingly minor, cannot be overstated. Its presence indicated that the cacao had been properly prepared, that the morning's ritual was proceeding according to tradition. As you observed, the villagers would watch each other's methods with careful attention, subtle nods of approval acknowledging competence. It was, in effect, a form of early quality control, intertwined with social cohesion. The drink was consumed while sitting cross-legged on the floor or on low benches, often accompanied by small bites of maize bread or fruits, integrating sustenance with the precise passage of time. Yet the ritual did more than mark morning labor. It also functioned as a quiet calibration of the senses. Each sip, bitter or slightly sweet, depending on the beans and the addition of chili or honey, attuned the drinker to the rhythm of life around them. The bird song, the distant barking of dogs, the faint rustle of workers moving through the groves, all became synchronized with the internal timing set by cacao consumption. In this way, the seemingly trivial act of drinking chocolate became a practice of mindfulness, ensuring that the community moved in harmony, guided not by mechanical devices but by subtle cues and shared experience. It is perhaps in these mundane repetitions that the Maya mastery of timekeeping is most evident. We often imagine civilizations measuring time solely through monumental structures or formal calendars. Yet here, in the quiet folds of morning, time was being tracked with extraordinary precision through ordinary acts. The consistency of the ritual, repeated day after day, allowed a kind of temporal memory to form, ensuring that agricultural cycles, market activities, and social obligations were all aligned with the natural world. The cacao rituals were a form of living documentation. Their effects subtle but persistent, but there was also unpredictability inherent in these routines. Weather could delay the roasting of beans, illness might prevent participation, or an unusually bitter harvest could disrupt the pattern. And yet, the villagers adapted. They adjusted their schedules, shifted the proportions of beans in the morning drink, or extended the ritual over multiple sittings. These small, almost imperceptible adaptations ensured that the day proceeded with continuity, even when the underlying circumstances fluctuated. The resilience of this system, quiet and understated, is part of what allowed Maya communities to thrive in environments that could be unforgiving, balancing consistency with flexibility in ways that are easy to overlook but historically significant. As you watch this process unfold, the larger implications start to emerge. The cacao ritual, in all its careful, painstaking steps, is a lens through which we can understand the subtle mechanisms of cultural continuity, the ways in which ordinary actions anchor a society's perception of time and order. By attending to the slow, repetitive, almost banal details, the Maya were practicing a kind of everyday engineering of temporal and social stability. And yet, one cannot help but wonder if these quiet rituals were so integral to daily life. How did they evolve in response to external pressures, such as trade demands, environmental changes, or political shifts within the city-states? The answers are not immediately apparent. They lie hidden in the fragments of observation, the traces of ordinary life preserved in murals, pottery, and colonial records. And so the morning ritual, seemingly simple and mundane, ends with a question lingering in the air. How did a beverage, so modest in its preparation and consumption, come to orchestrate the rhythm of life for an entire civilization? And what lessons does this quiet, daily order hold for the way humans interact with time, labor, and nature itself? As the sun climbs higher over the Maya lowlands, the initial hush of morning begins to give way to the subtle stirrings of communal activity. The cacao rituals of early hours have set the tone, and villagers, having calibrated their senses and synchronized their movements, now proceed with the tasks dictated by their environment and traditions. You, if you were quietly observing from the edge of the cacao groves, would notice how the morning's ceremonial drink serves as a transition point from stillness to motion, from individual preparation to coordinated community effort. The social significance of cacao is perhaps as vital as its role in marking time. In the villages scattered across the lowlands, the beverage is not a solitary indulgence, but a shared cultural anchor. When families gather to consume the first drink of the day, there is a rhythm to the interaction. Elders pour and serve, children observe and imitate, and laborers receive guidance for the work ahead. These interactions, subtle and unremarkable at first glance, carry the weight of cultural transmission. Skills, values, and routines are passed on not through formal instruction, but through observation and participation, much of it mediated through cacao. Cacao also acts as a currency of communication and negotiation within the village. It is a commodity that bridges social roles and economic function. While we might imagine trade and labor being governed by formal contracts or hierarchical imposition, the Maya relied on embedded systems of reciprocity. A morning cup of cacao shared among neighbors was an implicit, acknowledgement of cooperation. You will perform your tasks responsibly, and I will uphold mine. These unspoken agreements, enforced by routine and shared experience, maintained order in a society where written records were sparse and where much of daily life depended on personal reliability and communal oversight. Farmers themselves approached their cacao groves with both pragmatism and devotion. The agricultural calendar, informed by generations of observation, dictated when pods were harvested, how they were fermented, and when they were ready for ritual use. These cycles were embedded in the natural rhythms of rainfall, temperature, and soil fertility. A farmer's success was therefore intimately tied to attentive observation and careful timing. One cannot overstate how small deviations, a delayed harvest, a sudden storm, could ripple through the community. And yet, the villagers had learned to accommodate such variations with a patient, methodical approach, guided by rituals that reinforced stability. The morning ritual also intersected with the economic life of the community. Once the first sips of chocolate had been consumed, trade could begin in earnest. Barter systems were informed by the value of cacao, both as a consumable and as a medium of exchange. Farmers might trade a portion of their beans for pottery, textiles, or maize, carefully accounting for quality, quantity, and the timing of delivery. It is in these transactions that cacao assumes a dual role. It is both sustenance and currency, a substance that is measured, weighed, and evaluated with meticulous attention. The act of drinking, roasting, and grinding is inseparable from the act of exchange. These mundane actions underpin a broader economic network that spans villages, markets, and sometimes even distant city-states. Daily work, of course, is interspersed with observation and record-keeping. Maya farmers maintained informal methods of monitoring yields, rainfall, and the health of the groves. While the civilization is famous for monumental, stele, and formalized codices, the majority of day-to-day record-keeping occurred through oral traditions and mnemonic devices embedded in routine. Cacao, again, played a role. The frequency of certain preparations, the proportion of beans used in morning rituals, and the timing of fermentation cycles all acted as living records, guiding decisions for planting, harvesting, and trade. Even minor disruptions, unexpected pest, a delayed harvest were noted through adjustments in ritual timing and daily activity. What might strike an outsider as tedious repeated observation, careful grinding, constant monitoring, is in fact a sophisticated system of timekeeping and risk management. The Maya did not merely rely on ceremonial or symbolic practices. Their rituals were tools of empirical observation. When a farmer senses that a batch of beans has fermented too long, or that the foam of the morning chocolate is unusually thin, they are responding to subtle environmental cues. These cues, honed over generations, allowed the Maya to anticipate problems, adapt to challenges, and maintain a stable rhythm in both agricultural production and social life. Beyond practicalities, the ritual consumption of cacao holds spiritual resonance. While not overtly dramatic or theatrical in the manner of large-scale ceremonies, the quiet devotion of the morning routine reflects a worldview in which every action, however mundane, carries significance. By consuming chocolate at precise intervals, farmers aligned themselves with cosmic cycles, respecting the relationship between human labor and natural order. This was not a matter of abstract belief, but of lived experience. The timing of rains, the growth of crops, and the health of the community were all intertwined with attentiveness to small, repeated actions. The rhythm of cacao consumption reinforced a sense of continuity and order, allowing the community to endure in the face of environmental uncertainty. Interestingly, these practices were far from isolated. Neighboring villages, though separated by stretches of forest, would coordinate certain activities through shared knowledge of cacao cycles. Seasonal changes, trade fairs, and inter-village gatherings were all structured with attention to cacao readiness, ensuring that timing, quality, and quantity could be reliably anticipated. In this way, the simple morning ritual expanded outward, connecting disparate communities through a shared understanding of time and resource management. The humble act of sipping chocolate in the early morning was, therefore, both deeply local and quietly universal within the region. Yet, despite the apparent stability of these practices, questions remain about adaptation and resilience. How did cacao rituals change in response to external pressures, shifting climate patterns, political upheavals, or contact with other Mesoamerican cultures? How did individual creativity or improvisation influence the standardization of rituals that seem so rigid to modern observers? While the physical actions, roasting, grinding, brewing remained largely consistent, subtle variations in preparation, timing, and consumption suggest a level of experimentation and observation that we can only infer. These variations, while mundane in isolation, collectively shaped the evolution of ritual practice, influencing both economic stability and social cohesion. As you consider the intricate interplay of agriculture, ritual, and social organization, it becomes clear that the boring aspects of daily life are anything but trivial. The careful sorting of cacao pods, the repeated stirring of morning chocolate, the precise timing of harvests, these actions are the scaffolding upon which the Maya constructed a resilient society. Each gesture, though seemingly mundane, carries layers of meaning. It is an act of sustenance, a measurement of time, a reinforcement of social bonds, and a quiet acknowledgement of the natural world. And yet, even as these patterns persist, there remains an unresolved thought hovering over the village. If the cycles of cacao and ritual have provided such reliable structure for generations, what happens when forces beyond the village, droughts, disease, or political conflict interrupt these carefully calibrated routines? How resilient are these mundane yet crucial practices when confronted with unpredictability? It is this tension between stability and uncertainty, between routine and adaptation, that carries the story forward, preparing the stage for the next section, where the consequences of disrupted routines, human ingenuity, and the deeper layers of social and spiritual life will be explored. As the day advances, the rhythm of the village shifts from the quiet precision of morning rituals to the cumulative weight of labor, trade, and observation. The early cup of chocolate has already performed its role as temporal anchor, synchronizing the movements of the villagers and signaling the commencement of work. By mid-morning, the cacao itself has moved from ritual symbol to practical tool, intertwined with the demands of survival, productivity, and social cohesion. You, standing amid the grove, might notice the subtle ways in which this transition manifests. The methodical sorting of beans, the careful tending of young cacao shoots, the exchange of surplus beans with neighboring families, all extensions of the morning practice. Disruptions to these routines illuminate the ingenuity and resilience of the Maya farmers. Imagine a particularly hot season when pods dry too quickly in the sun, or a sudden rainfall that soaks beans meant for fermentation. Such challenges, though minor in isolation, ripple through the tightly synchronized daily schedule. Farmers respond with patience and observation, adjusting roasting times, modifying fermentation techniques, or reallocating beans for immediate consumption rather than trade. Even these adjustments are ritualized, performed with deliberate care so that the balance of community, time, and labor remains intact. The act of sipping chocolate, once a quiet marker of the morning, becomes a reference point in navigating unforeseen circumstances. The social implications of these adaptations are equally significant. A farmer who successfully negotiates a disrupted harvest earns respect within the community, reinforcing social bonds and maintaining a collective rhythm of life. Sharing knowledge about modified preparation methods, or demonstrating resilience in adjusting to environmental pressures, becomes part of the unspoken education of the next generation. Children observe how elders assess the texture of beans, test the aroma of roasting cacao, and measure the thickness of foam in the morning drink. These subtle lessons, though appearing mundane, transmit expertise, social cohesion, and cultural memory with remarkable efficiency. The midday market provides another lens into the role of cacao in Maya society. Farmers bring portions of their harvest to local trade centers, where beans are weighed, evaluated, and exchanged for essential goods. Each transaction relies not on numerical abstraction alone, but on lived knowledge, the visual inspection of beans, the tactile evaluation of their firmness, and the sensory testing of aroma and flavor. Here, the lessons of the morning ritual, the patience, observation, and attentiveness become central to economic life. The entire social ecosystem, from labor to trade to consumption, is scaffolded by these repeated, almost meditative acts. It is remarkable how such understated routines achieve a level of sophistication often overlooked by modern historians. Cacao rituals provided a form of empirical observation long before modern science formalized systematic measurement. Farmers recorded environmental changes, tracked agricultural cycles, and optimized production methods, all through repeated interaction with the crop. The foam on the morning drink, the consistency of the grind, and the timing of pod harvests were indicators of quality, readiness, and environmental conditions, an interwoven network of information flowing silently through daily life. And yet, the story of cacao is not merely about labor and utility. It is about community resilience and identity. These rituals, calm, repetitive, and unassuming, embedded a sense of continuity in the face of uncertainty. They structured not only the day, but the life of the community, ensuring that knowledge, social bonds, and survival strategies were passed from one generation to the next. Every mundane act, removing beans from a pod, roasting over fire, grinding with stone, was a node in a vast system of cultural continuity. Unglamorous yet essential. By late afternoon, as work slows and villagers rest in the shade of the cacao groves, the echoes of the morning ritual remain present. Conversations about upcoming harvests, adjustments to trade agreements, or minor repairs to homes are all implicitly linked to the structure established by the first cup of chocolate. Even in leisure, the cycle set by the ritual continues to guide attention and behavior. There is a quiet satisfaction in this order, a reassurance that the world is coherent, predictable, and navigable through consistent attention to small details. Yet, it is precisely the unassuming nature of this order that raises further reflection. In historical accounts, monumental structures, dramatic battles, and political upheavals dominate attention, while the everyday mechanisms of survival, observation, and communal organization are overlooked. But for the Maya, the careful tending of cacao and the disciplined enactment of morning rituals shaped lives as profoundly as kings and warriors did. They remind us that stability, knowledge, and continuity are often rooted in repetition and attention to detail, rather than in spectacle or grandeur. Even as the sun begins to sink and the day winds down, the implications of the morning ritual echo in subtle ways. The resilience and adaptability of these routines reveal a form of practical wisdom, a sophisticated understanding of the interplay between human behavior and environmental conditions. They illustrate how ordinary actions, performed with care and consistency, can structure entire communities, mediate risk, and transmit knowledge across generations. Finally, you are left with the lingering thought that the boring aspects of life, the careful selection of cacao beans, the precise stirring of morning chocolate, the attentiveness to environmental nuance, not trivial. They represent a form of mastery over time, a delicate negotiation with nature, and an enduring link between past and present. These small, repetitive actions, often overlooked, allowed the Maya to measure their mornings, organize their labor, and shape a resilient social world, quietly and persistently. And so, the story concludes with a reflection that stretches beyond the village. What might modern societies learn from this quiet attention to ordinary routines? How could small, repeated acts once considered mundanes serve as anchors for time, resilience, and community cohesion in a world increasingly dominated by speed, distraction, and impermanence? The morning chocolate ritual, simple yet profound, offers a window into a world where the mundane was central, and where the structure of everyday life carried the weight of survival, knowledge, and cultural continuity. It is a lesson in patience, observation, and the understated power of routiner story that begins with a sip of chocolate and ends with a contemplation of human ingenuity across the quiet passage of time. In the Maya lowlands, the rhythm of daily life was intimately linked to the cycles of nature. The rising sun, the shifting patterns of rainfall, the phases of the moon, all dictated agricultural schedules, ritual observances, and social interactions. Amid these rhythms, the humble cacao bean occupied a surprisingly versatile role, functioning not only as nourishment and ritual medium, but also as a practical instrument for measuring and recording time. You, standing quietly at the edge of a cacao grove, might see farmers moving among the trees, carefully noting the size of pods, the ripeness of beans, and the subtle changes in leaf patterns. Each observation, though mundane in appearance, served as a form of data collection, a systematized attention to environmental cues that allowed the community to anticipate and plan for the future. The Maya were meticulous observers of natural cycles. Agricultural success depended on aligning planting and harvesting schedules with seasonal patterns, while monumental structures and written codices often dominate modern perceptions of Maya ingenuity. The practical systems embedded in daily farming life were equally sophisticated. Cacao, with its predictable growth patterns, served as a living calendar. Farmers measured the passage of days and weeks by the readiness of pods for harvest. They counted the number of days a pod had been on the tree, correlated with rainfall and sun exposure, and used these observations to inform future planting. In this way, the beans themselves were both product and record, embodying the information necessary to maintain agricultural continuity. The process of turning cacao into a timekeeping tool began with careful documentation, though not in the way we think of written records. Most Maya farmers relied on oral mnemonics, memory aids, and physical markers in the field. For example, a particular pattern of leaves, the presence of certain insects, or the position of a pod on the tree could signal how many days had passed since flowering. Beans were occasionally marked with simple scratches or tied with fibers to denote specific stages of readiness or quality. These subtle physical annotations acted as a ledger, tracking not just the condition of individual pods, but the broader rhythms of the grove. Moreover, cacao beans were employed as counting tools. Groups of beans could represent days, weeks, or months, depending on the purpose. A farmer preparing for the harvest might lay out a series of beans on a mat. Adjustments were made by moving beans from one row to another, creating a tactile visual system of record-keeping. This practice was repeated in the morning rituals, intertwining practical measurement with ceremonial observance. Each sip of chocolate, each careful grinding of roasted beans, was a reminder of the passage of time and the precision required to maintain equilibrium between labor and natural cycles. The use of cacao as a temporal measure also extended beyond the groves into social and administrative life. Village leaders, often experienced farmers themselves, monitored the communal stock of beans, noting quantities set aside for trade, ritual, or personal consumption. Records were maintained orally or through physical arrangements of beans, with the position, number, and condition of each bean conveying essential information. For instance, a line of beans arranged on a mat might denote the total number of days until the next communal market or religious observance. Though lacking written numerals in this context, the system functioned effectively, combining the tangible qualities of cacao with communal memory to ensure coordination and consistency. The sensory dimension of this practice cannot be overstated. Farmers did not rely solely on visual cues. They smelled, touched, and tasted the beans to assess readiness and quality. These sensory observations, repeated consistently over years, formed a sophisticated knowledge system. The subtle difference in aroma between a pod ready for fermentation and one slightly underdeveloped, or the tactile firmness of a dried bean, provided immediate information that influenced decisions. In this way, cacao functioned as both record and tool, encoding time and environmental data in its physical form, accessible to anyone trained in observation and practice. This system of measurement extended to communal and economic life. trade agreements, labor allocations, and even ritual scheduling were all informed by the state of cacao stocks. A farmer's ability to accurately interpret the bean's signals affected not only personal livelihood, but also the coordination of the larger community. If a batch of beans fermented too long or too short, the ripple effects could influence trade exchanges, ritual readiness, and future planting decisions. Precision mattered, and the ritualized attention to detail in the preparation and counting of cacao ensured that the community's rhythms remained aligned with the cycles of nature. Even seemingly trivial variations were recorded and remembered. Farmers would note whether a particular grove received more morning sunlight or whether certain pods matured earlier than usual, subtly adjusting their arrangements of beans to reflect these observations. Over time, this created a cumulative body of knowledge, allowing successive generations to anticipate environmental changes and optimize their agricultural strategies. These practices highlight the intersection of routine, observation, and empirical insight. What appears boring or repetitive is, in fact, a system of knowledge management, encoded in the daily handling of a simple agricultural product. The connection between cacao and calendrical awareness also extended into ritual and social hierarchy. Certain beans were designated for ceremonial use, their readiness carefully tracked to coincide with specific religious events or community observances. Leaders relied on the precise condition of cacao to plan ceremonies, ensuring that offerings, feasts, and communal activities aligned with celestial or seasonal markers. Even the mundane act of measuring beans for morning chocolate became a microcosm of these broader cycles, reflecting an awareness of time that was both personal and communal. Yet, this reliance on cacao as a tool of measurement was not without its challenges. Environmental variability, expected rainfall, pest outbreaks, or extreme heat could disrupt the careful schedules maintained by farmers. Social or political pressures, such as increased demand from neighboring city-states, could further strain the system. In response, farmers developed adaptive strategies, adjusting the number of beans in their counting arrangements, modifying fermentation practices, or reallocating stocks to maintain balance. The flexibility of the system, embedded within the structure of ritualized observation, ensured resilience in the face of uncertainty. By mid-morning, as farmers complete their initial rounds of the grove and begin tending to other crops or household tasks, the cacao-based measures continue to inform activity. Every decision from when to harvest maize to when to prepare communal meals, subtly guided by the systems established through careful attention to cacao. It is a remarkable testament to human ingenuity, a civilization leveraging the ordinary, repetitive handling of a humble bean to create an effective system of measurement, record-keeping, and social coordination. As the day unfolds, it becomes evident that what may appear monotonous, the counting of beans, the marking of pods, the sensory testing of roasted cacao, is actually a sophisticated orchestration of knowledge, community, and survival. These unassuming routines allowed the Maya to align labor, ritual, and trade with the rhythms of the environment, ensuring both continuity and adaptability. And yet, as precise and reliable as this system seems, questions remain. How did such practical and tactile methods evolve into formalized calendars and codices? How did the experiential knowledge encoded in cacao influence broader societal structures, religious observances, and intervillage cooperation? The answers, hidden in the folds of daily life, await discovery in the next section. By mid-morning, the village has transitioned fully into its daily rhythm, and the cacao-based system of measurement that began in the groves now exerts influence across social, economic, and ritual life. You, standing at the edge of a sunlit cacao grove, would notice that the orderly routines established during the morning chocolate ritual are mirrored in every facet of village activity. The arrangement of beans, the readiness of pods, and the observation of environmental cues are all quietly guiding labor, trade, and social interactions, transforming the ordinary into a framework of communal order. Farmers, having begun their day with careful assessment of cacao stocks, now apply their observations to broader agricultural management. Beans set aside for fermentation or ritual use are cross-referenced with maize planting schedules, irrigation needs, and the health of other crops. The system is dynamic. Environmental variability, such as an unseasonably dry spell, may prompt the reassignment of certain beans or adjustment of the timing of rituals. The integration of cacao into these calculations is seamless, reflecting a worldview in which agricultural production, ritual timing, and social coordination are interdependent. Cacao also functions as a bridge between households. Village leaders and elder farmers communicate the state of the communal cacao reserves, using them to signal readiness for shared tasks or gatherings. A neatly arranged row of beans on a mat, denoting days until the next market or ritual event, provides a tangible reference point for planning. Even those less literate or formally educated can interpret the system through observation, fostering a participatory knowledge network in which information is encoded in a combination of sensory cues and spatial arrangements. The beans, simple and ordinary in themselves, carry the weight of coordination across the village. In the context of trade, cacao is equally influential. Farmers bring measured portions of beans to local or regional markets, where traders rely on the quality, quantity, and readiness of the product to schedule exchanges. The tactile and visual qualities of the beans communicate much of the information that a modern ledger or contract might contain. Roasted aroma, pod consistency, and foam thickness in a prepared beverage all serve as indicators of quality and readiness, allowing transactions to proceed with mutual understanding. The everyday handling of cacao thus becomes an essential medium for economic interaction, binding individual labor to broader systems of exchange. This reliance on cacao-based measures extends to ritual and spiritual life. Certain beans, meticulously tracked through their preparation, are designated for ceremonial use. Aligning these ceremonies with environmental and celestial cycles requires precise timing. The ritual must occur when beans are perfectly fermented, when the day's activities have progressed to an appropriate stage, and when community members are prepared to participate. Here, the seemingly mundane attention to detail in bean selection, roasting, and grinding has profound implications. It ensures that religious observances are coherent, socially synchronized, and environmentally attuned. Yet the system is not without its complications. Unpredictable factors, weather changes, pests, or human error, disrupt the delicate balance of observation, preparation, and ritual timing. Farmers have developed strategies to accommodate these disturbances. Adjustments in fermentation duration, minor changes in trade allocations, or even modifications to ritual schedules demonstrate a remarkable flexibility embedded within the structure of routine. The very repetition and apparent monotony of cacao handling provide the foundation for adaptive decision-making by maintaining consistency in daily practice. The community is able to absorb and respond to variability without losing cohesion. Intervillage coordination illustrates the broader societal implications of these practices. Nearby settlements, aware of each other's cacao cycles through trade, observation, or occasional shared ceremonies, synchronize key activities to ensure mutual benefit. A festival in one village may depend on the readiness of cacao in another, or market exchanges may require precise knowledge of bean fermentation stages elsewhere. The humble cacao bean, measured, tracked, and counted, thus serves as both temporal anchor and social connector, weaving together a network of communities whose survival depends on shared understanding and coordination. Interestingly, the Maya's use of cacao as a temporal and social tool illustrates an integration of observation, sensory engagement, and memory that mirrors scientific principles. While the civilization did not employ instruments like clocks or written ledgers in everyday practice, the system demonstrates empirical reasoning. Hypotheses about pod readiness are tested through observation. Records are maintained through repetitive routines, and patterns are encoded in physical, visual, and sensory markers. Knowledge accumulates cumulatively, with each generation refining methods, adjusting to environmental fluctuations, and preserving cultural continuity. Moreover, this system fosters resilience in the face of unforeseen disruptions. If a batch of beans ferments too long, adjustments are made in both ritual use and trade allocation. If rainfall patterns delay pod development, the timing of market or ceremonial events is subtly shifted. Each adaptation is facilitated by the careful observation and structured routines developed through centuries of experience with cacao. What may appear to a modern observer as tedious or repetitive is, in fact, a highly sophisticated network of knowledge, management, and community coordination. This section of daily life also underscores the interconnectedness of work, ritual, and learning. Children observe and participate in cacao handling from an early age, learning both practical skills and social norms. The meticulous attention to detail in counting, arranging, and assessing beans serves as both education and socialization. Young villagers internalize the rhythms of labor, trade, and ritual, ensuring that the knowledge encoded in these mundane acts is transmitted across generations. The quiet repetition of tasks, sorting beans, arranging them for counting, monitoring fermentation, thus becomes a vector for cultural memory, reinforcing stability and cohesion over time. Even as the day progresses and work spreads across fields, kitchens, and markets, the cacao-based measures continue to influence decisions and interactions. They provide a framework for anticipating tasks, allocating labor, and coordinating with neighbors. They transform a simple agricultural product into a sophisticated instrument of temporal, economic, and social organization. Yet, As effective as this system seems, it leaves open questions. How did these tactile, bean-based methods inform the development of formalized calendars and record-keeping systems? How did ritual, trade, and observation merge to influence broader societal structures? And crucially, how did the Maya ensure the persistence of this knowledge across generations? Given the reliance on memory, observation, and routine rather than written documentation, these questions linger in the air, inviting reflection on the ingenuity hidden within the seemingly boring routines of daily life. It is in the quiet handling of cacaoite selection, measurement, fermentation, and preparation that the Maya created a living system of measurement, record-keeping, and social coordination, one whose principles resonate far beyond the village and hint at the sophisticated temporal awareness of an entire civilization. As the day progresses into late afternoon, the quiet hum of village life continues. But now the effects of the morning's cacao-based timekeeping are fully evident. Farmers, having tracked the condition of pods, arranged beans for counting, and observed environmental cues, make decisions that shape both the immediate day and the coming weeks. The village operates not under the strict authority of written records or formalized clocks, but through the subtle discipline of observation, routine, and tactile measurement. The cacao bean, seemingly ordinary, becomes a repository of communal knowledge, guiding labor, trade, and ritual with a quiet authority. By farmers often consult the cacao stockpiles, assessing readiness for future use. The counting systems, established in the morning lines of beans representing days, marked pods, signaling stages of readiness, inform decisions about planting, harvesting, and trade. Adjustments are made to accommodate variations in weather, soil conditions, or labor availability. These small recalibrations are essential. Even minor miscalculations can ripple outward, affecting community consumption, ceremonial timing, and inter-village trade networks. The meticulous attention to beans ensures that the village maintains coherence, even amidst the unpredictability of the natural world. Trade, in particular, underscores the broader importance of cacao-based record-keeping. Farmers bring measured quantities of beans to markets, where sensory assessment, touch, smell, taste, and visual inspection guides transactions. The preparation of ceremonial chocolate or daily drinks also serves as a quality check, linking agricultural practice to social and economic exchange. Traders and neighboring communities implicitly rely on these cacao-mediated measures. The number of beans, their condition, and their arrangement communicate essential information. In this way, a humble bean becomes both unit of currency and temporal marker, bridging the personal, the communal, and the inter-village spheres. The integration of cacao into ritual further amplifies its significance. Ceremonies, aligned with environmental and celestial cycles, are scheduled based on the readiness of beans and the patterns observed in the groves. Leaders rely on these measurements to coordinate religious observances, communal gatherings, and offerings, ensuring that rituals reflect the community's understanding of both natural and social rhythms. Even minor disruptions, underdeveloped pod, a delayed harvest, or a sudden rainfall necessitate adaptations in preparation and scheduling, demonstrating the resilience embedded in the system. What emerges from these practices is a remarkable synthesis of empirical observation, social coordination, and ritualized routine. The Maya's use of cacao as a living calendar illustrates how knowledge can be encoded in everyday objects and routines. Beans serve simultaneously as nutritional resources, measurement tools, and carriers of communal memory. Repetition, observation, and careful documentation, though informal and tactile, create a system capable of guiding complex decisions, maintaining cohesion, and transmitting knowledge across generations. Equally important is the educational aspect embedded in these routines. Children participate in the selection, counting, and preparation of cacao, learning to interpret subtle cues from pod appearance, bean texture, and foam consistency. Through these practices, they internalize both practical agricultural skills and social norms. The seemingly boring, repetitive acts of handling cacao instill a disciplined attention to detail, patience, and a sense of responsibility. In essence, the village's entire knowledge system is encoded in the ordinary rhythms of daily life. With cacao as the central instrument of learning and continuity, the adaptability of the cacao-based system is also striking. Environmental variability, drought, pests, or temperature fluctuations requires adjustments in fermentation, trade allocation, or ritual timing. Social disruptions, such as labor shortages or shifting market demands, similarly necessitate modifications. Yet, because the system is embedded in routine and observation, rather than rigid formalization, it proves remarkably resilient. Farmers can respond to change without losing the coherence of communal life, highlighting a sophisticated understanding of risk management long before the development of formal scientific methods. In reflecting on this system, it becomes clear that the boring aspects of Maya cacao culture, counting beans, observing pod ripeness, monitoring foam consistency, are far from trivial. They constitute a sophisticated knowledge network that links agriculture, ritual, trade, and social cohesion. The mundane repetition of daily practice encodes empirical observation, cultural memory, and adaptive strategies, all essential for survival and continuity. Cacao, in its quiet, persistent way, transforms the ordinary into a framework for understanding time, labor, and community. Finally, as the sun dips toward the horizon and villagers conclude their work, the implications of these routines become evident. The tactile, observational systems developed around cacao not only sustained communities, but also laid the groundwork for more formalized calendrical and record-keeping practices observed in later Maya civilization. They demonstrate how ordinary objects and repetitive tasks can encode complex knowledge, shaping society in subtle yet profound ways. The story concludes with a reflection that resonates beyond the Maya world. How might we, in modern societies, find wisdom in the ordinary, in the disciplined repetition of small, seemingly trivial actions? How do everyday routines encode knowledge, sustain communities, and foster resilience in the face of uncertainty? The Maya's use of cacao as both sustenance and measure reminds us that the power of the ordinary often exceeds our immediate recognition, quietly structuring life across generations. The early morning air in a Maya village carries the quiet anticipation of the day ahead, punctuated by the subtle aroma of damp earth and distant foliage. You, standing in the courtyard of a modest home near a cacao grove, would notice the careful bustle of activity already underway. Though the world appears still at first glance. Every movement is purposeful, orchestrated by routines honed over generations. Among these, none is more consistent or more quietly significant than the preparation of cacao, a daily ritual that shapes both time and communal life. The process begins with the selection of beans. Even before dawn fully breaks, villagers gather cacao pods, inspecting them for ripeness and quality. Each pod is held and rotated, its surface examined for firmness and subtle color variations. The pod's exterior, rough and mottled, offers immediate clues about its contents. A pod that feels overly soft may be overripe, while one that resists pressure may not have fully developed. These assessments are rarely arbitrary. They rely on a sensory memory cultivated through repeated experience. By handling each pod carefully, farmers and household members ensure that only the most suitable beans will enter the preparation ritual. Once selected, the pods are split open using wooden or stone tools, revealing the moist, fragrant beans nestled within a fibrous white pulp. The beans are separated from this pulp, a task requiring both care and patience. Too rough a hand could damage the delicate beans. Too hasty an effort could leave remnants of pulp that might spoil the flavor. This separation is more than a culinary step. It is the first moment where the ritual dimension of chocolate preparation begins. Each bean represents potential not only for sustenance, but for the subtle marking of time that has structured village life for generations. Fermentation follows, a stage that transforms the raw beans into a medium capable of producing the cherished chocolate beverage. Beans are placed in shallow containers or baskets, often lined with banana leaves, and left to rest in a warm, shaded area. Over the course of several days, natural microbes interact with the sugars and pulp, producing a rich, complex aroma and darkening the beans' color. Farmers monitor the process closely, turning the beans regularly and observing subtle changes in texture and scent. Though it may seem mundane, this careful attention is a form of empirical observation. Subtle cues in the smell or feel of the beans indicate readiness, guiding both culinary and ceremonial use. After fermentation, drying is the next critical step. Beans are spread on mats, rooftops, or specially prepared platforms, exposed to sun and wind. The drying process must be neither too fast nor too slow. Beans dried too quickly may crack or retain bitterness. Beans dried too slowly risk mold or spoilage. Farmers monitor the beans with a practiced eye, adjusting exposure as necessary. The rhythm of turning, shading, and inspecting the beans is meditative, a repetitive set of movements that reinforces focus, patience, and attention to detail. The drying stage serves as a bridge between agricultural labor and household preparation, linking fieldwork with the domestic and ritual life of the village. Roasting is the stage where the beans' transformation becomes most sensory. Once fully dried, beans are roasted over carefully tended fires. The aroma changes, becoming richer, deeper, and unmistakably chocolate-like. Temperature control is subtle but essential. Too much heat will char the beans, producing a bitter, undesirable flavor. Too little will leave them underdeveloped. Women and men responsible for roasting rely on sight, smell, and even sound, the slight popping of beans as they release moisture to judge readiness. Here, the ordinary acts of turning and shaking beans take on an almost sacred rhythm, a practiced dance that links labor observation and cultural continuity. Once roasted, the beans are crushed and ground, traditionally using stone tools or wooden mortar. The resulting powder is often mixed with water, spices, or maize to create the familiar foamy chocolate beverage. Stirring and whisking are deliberate, careful motions designed to produce a consistent texture and froth. The foam, valued for its appearance and texture, signals a successful preparation and marks the transition from raw agricultural product to ritualized drink. Every step in this process is sensory, rich. The aroma, texture, and subtle sound of whisking reinforce the cultural and temporal significance of the ritual. Preparation of chocolate is not solely a domestic task. It carries social and ceremonial weight. Even the first sip in the morning functions as a marker of daily rhythm, a calibration of senses, and a subtle reaffirmation of communal cohesion. Family members gather to share the beverage, exchanging observations, imparting guidance, and reinforcing social norms. The process of making chocolate is itself a form of knowledge transmission, teaching younger villagers about the correct timing, technique, and sensory cues associated with each stage. In this way, the daily preparation ritual bridges generations, linking hands, eyes, and noses across centuries of practice. What is striking, as you observe, is the interplay between the mundane and the meaningful. Roasting, grinding, stirring acts that might appear repetitive or boring serve as tools for temporal measurement, sensory calibration, and cultural continuity. The precision required in each stage ensures that the ritual retains its effectiveness, reinforcing social order, personal discipline, and environmental awareness. Even small variations, slightly bitter batch, foam that is too thin, a bean left unroasted, guiding adjustments in subsequent preparations, and subtly teaching patience, observation, and attentiveness. Yet, questions linger about the evolution of this ritual. How did the techniques and sequences of preparation develop over generations? How did small household variations contribute to the refinement of flavor, texture, and ceremonial significance? How did these daily acts, repeated countless times across countless villages, influence broader social structures, economic networks, and the cultural prominence of cacao in Maya civilization? The answers are hidden in the folds of practice, observation, and memory, waiting to be revealed in the continuation of the story. Even as the chocolate is consumed and morning labor begins, the preparation ritual leaves an enduring imprint, a framework of sensory attention, cultural learning, and social coordination that resonates quietly throughout the day. It is a reminder that the power of routine, observation, and repetitive practice can shape both individual and communal life in subtle but profound ways. As the morning unfolds, the village hums with coordinated activity, yet the rhythms established by chocolate preparation continue to guide the day. You might notice how each stage of cacao handling from roasting to grinding intersects with communal labor, social instruction, and ceremonial awareness. While the process may appear repetitive to an outside observer, it embodies a sophisticated system of knowledge transmission, environmental attunement, and social cohesion. The act of grinding roasted cacao is particularly significant, bridging domestic labor with communal learning. Women and men engaged in this task demonstrate technique to younger members, teaching them the rhythm of the mortar and pestle, the timing required to achieve consistent powder, and the subtle cues that indicate readiness. It is through these tactile and sensory practices that practical knowledge is encoded in memory. The children's imitation, correction, and repetition ensure the continuity of expertise, reinforcing the notion that cultural knowledge is transmitted not merely through words but through disciplined, hands-on experience. The preparation process also reinforces social hierarchies and communal roles. Elders, recognized for their experience and expertise, guide novices, shaping both practical skill and social behavior. The quiet authority exercised through demonstration and oversight ensures that tasks are performed correctly, subtly instilling discipline and respect. Younger members, observing and assisting, internalize lessons about precision, patience, and attentiveness to detail. Even seemingly mundane tasks, like the careful separation of beans from pulp or the monitoring of roasting, become vectors for moral and social education at the same time. The sensory richness of the ritual anchors villagers in the present moment. The aroma of roasting beans, the tactile resistance of the pestle against the stone mortar, and the visual cues of changing bean color demand constant attention. This sensory engagement transforms routine labor into a form of mindful practice, enhancing both skill and awareness. Observing the meticulous preparation of cacao reveals how routine tasks, when performed with care and repetition, can cultivate focus, discipline, and a deep attunement to the surrounding environment. Chocolate preparation also intersects with ritual and spiritual observance. Certain beans, carefully tracked during fermentation and roasting, are reserved for ceremonial use. The timing of these preparations is critical, aligning with environmental cycles, community events, and religious calendars. In larger gatherings, the beverage becomes an offering, a means of honoring deities, ancestors, or the cyclical forces of nature. The careful attention to each stage of preparation ensures that both the physical product and the act of serving carry symbolic significance. Every stir of the chocolate, every measured portion of beans, reinforces the connection between humans, the natural world, and the divine, beyond ritual. Chocolate preparation subtly structures the village's economic and social rhythms. Beans prepared in the household may be set aside for trade, with their quality determining the terms of exchange. Those responsible for production must balance domestic consumption, ceremonial allocation, and market obligations. Each decision requires careful observation, planning, and adherence to routine, reflecting a system in which domestic labor, social cohesion, and economic management are intertwined. Even minor deviations, the batch over-roasted, foam too thin, or beans slightly under-fermentedness, necessitate recalibration, demonstrating the adaptive and responsive nature of the practice. The cumulative effect of daily chocolate preparation is profound. The ritual fosters resilience by cultivating skills, social knowledge, and environmental awareness. Through repeated attention to sensory cues, villagers develop expertise in quality assessment, timing, and resource allocation. Social cohesion is reinforced as elders guide novices, households coordinate labor, and communities rely on shared knowledge for both ritual and economic activities. Cultural continuity is ensured as routines become habitual, embedding values, expectations, and practical knowledge in the rhythms of everyday life. This practice also illuminates a subtle form of knowledge management. Each step of cacao preparation encodes information. The sensory evaluation of beans provides immediate feedback on environmental conditions. The timing of roasting tracks daily and seasonal cycles, and the allocation of beans for ritual, trade, or consumption reflects communal priorities. These ordinary acts constitute a system of observation, measurement, and transmission, demonstrating how knowledge can be embedded in routine, tactile practice rather than formal record-keeping. Yet, as precise and structured as this system appears, challenges abound. Variability in bean quality, whether disruptions or unexpected social demands, require flexible responses. Farmers and household members must adjust fermentation, roasting, and allocation strategies, balancing consistency with adaptability. The success of chocolate preparation, therefore, depends not only on skill and routine, but on attentiveness to changing conditions and the ability to integrate observation into practical decision-making. And so, the seemingly mundane daily preparation of cacao reveals itself as a nexus of cultural, practical, and spiritual life. It bridges generations through hands-on learning, aligns labor and ritual with natural rhythms, and sustains social and economic networks within and beyond the village. These repetitive, sensory-rich practices, though outwardly ordinary, carry profound implications for resilience, knowledge transmission, and communal identity. Yet, questions remain, waiting for the next stage of the story. How did these daily practices evolve in response to environmental pressures or social change? How did small household variations contribute to broader innovations in chocolate preparation, ritual observance, or economic coordination? How did the ordinary repetition of routine transform into cultural expertise with lasting significance? The answers lie in the continuity of practice, the accumulation of sensory knowledge, and the quiet adaptations that occur over generations and evolution that will be revealed in the next section. As the sun rises higher and the day stretches on, the culmination of the morning's chocolate preparation begins to shape both household and village life. What started as careful selection, fermentation, and roasting of cacao now reaches its apex, the communal consumption, ceremonial presentation, and allocation for trade. Each step of preparation, painstakingly repeated, contributes to a network of knowledge, social cohesion, and cultural continuity that is felt throughout the community. The finished chocolate, rich in aroma and foamy in texture, is more than a beverage. It is a marker of time, a tool for education, and a symbol of social and spiritual order. In the household, elders guide children in tasting and assessing the chocolate, instructing them in the subtle qualities that indicate successful preparation, the depth of flavor, the richness of foam, the uniformity of texture. These lessons, imparted through sensory engagement rather than written words, ensure that each generation internalizes the skills, knowledge, and cultural significance embedded in daily preparation. Through repetition, children learn patience, observation, and precision qualities essential not only for chocolate making, but for broader participation in agricultural, economic, and ritual life beyond the household. The chocolate ritual resonates throughout the village. Each batch prepared for ceremonial use or trade carries with it a set of social obligations and expectations. Rituals involving chocolate are carefully timed to coincide with environmental and celestial cycles, ensuring alignment with communal religious practices. The act of offering chocolate, whether in the home or at a public ceremony, reflects a disciplined attention to detail, a respect for natural cycles, and a commitment to shared cultural norms. The quiet repetition of preparation, once seen as mundane, thus becomes central to the social and spiritual cohesion of the community. The preparation ritual also intersects with economic life. Beans reserved for trade are evaluated for quality, their readiness and sensory characteristics determining the terms of exchange. Traders and neighboring villages rely on these measures to plan markets, assess fairness, and coordinate exchanges. Here, the tactile and sensory knowledge cultivated in daily household practice becomes an integral part of regional economic networks. The humble cacao bean, carefully tracked through fermentation, roasting, and grinding, serves simultaneously as a consumable, a tool of measurement, and a unit of trade. The adaptability of the chocolate preparation system is striking. Environmental changes, unexpected rains, prolonged drought, or pest infestations demand adjustments in fermentation, duration, roasting intensity, and allocation of beans. Social fluctuations, such as labor shortages or shifts in market demand, similarly require careful recalibration. Yet the repetition inherent in daily routines fosters resilience. Farmers and household members, through years of practice and attentive observation, develop the flexibility needed to respond to uncertainty while maintaining the integrity of ritual, social, and economic systems. The quiet repetition of mundane tasks becomes the foundation for sophisticated adaptive strategies. Through these ordinary practices, knowledge is transmitted and preserved. Each sensory Cuban texture, aroma, foam thicknessing codes, empirical observations about environmental conditions, crop quality, and ritual timing. Each repeated gesture, turning beans, stirring chocolate, monitoring fermentation, reinforces both technical skill and social norms. The cumulative effect is a robust system of cultural memory and practical wisdom that extends beyond individual households to the village, the region, and across generations. As evening approaches and the day winds down, the significance of these routines becomes evident. The daily preparation of chocolate, seemingly repetitive and mundane, has sustained the village's temporal, social, and cultural frameworks. It has provided a medium for teaching, coordination, and adaptation, linking households, markets, and ceremonial life in a network of practices grounded in attentive observation and careful repetition. In the quiet work of roasting, grinding, and stirring, the Maya encoded resilience, knowledge, and continuity qualities essential for survival in a variable and often challenging environment. Finally, the story leaves a reflection that extends beyond the village. What does it mean to find mastery in repetition, insight in the mundane, and cohesion in routine? The Maya's chocolate preparation rituals demonstrate that profound knowledge and social stability often arise not from grandiose actions, but from sustained, disciplined attention to ordinary processes. Every sip, every stir, Every carefully monitored bean reflects centuries of accumulated experience, teaching that the power of the ordinary can shape lives, communities, and civilizations. The daily preparation of chocolate, simple yet meticulous, thus offers a lens into a world where the mundane is meaningful, where routine encodes wisdom, and where the quiet repetition of small actions sustains cultural, social, and practical life across generations. The first rays of sunlight illuminate the Maya village market, a space that is simultaneously vibrant and measured, quiet yet essential to survival. You would notice early risers carrying baskets filled with carefully prepared cacao beans, approaching the central plaza. The market, unlike the grand temples or monumental structures, is a locus of ordinary life, a stage where survival, social interaction, and cultural continuity converge through the quiet work of exchange. Cacao, having been selected, fermented, and dried, now assumes its role as both commodity and currency. Each bean is a unit of value, its quality assessed through tactile inspection, visual cues, and aroma. Buyers and sellers, well practiced in these sensory evaluations, move deliberately, exchanging information with subtle gestures and brief conversation. Here, the mundane details of each bean's size, sheen, firmness, and even the scent of residual pulp carry significance, informing both the price and the perceived reliability of the seller. Market routines are surprisingly structured. Farmers arrive in staggered schedules to avoid overcrowding, placing their beans on mats or in woven baskets according to type, quality, and intended use. Beans designated for ritual or ceremonial purposes are often grouped separately from those intended for trade or daily consumption. Buyers, ranging from local households to itinerant traders from neighboring villages, follow established protocols. They inspect, count, negotiate, and finally exchange, often using cacao itself as currency. The process is slow, methodical, and surprisingly quiet, a dance of observation, calculation, and subtle communication. Barter, rather than standardized currency, dominates these exchanges. Cacao beans might be traded for maize, pottery, textiles, or other essentials. The value of the beans is assessed not in abstract numbers, but through accumulated knowledge. An experienced farmer or trader can gauge the quality and approximate worth of a batch through repeated observation and comparison. Small differences, slightly darker hue, a smoother texture, or the presence of uniform size can influence the terms of exchange. Here, repetition, attention to detail, and sensory expertise form the backbone of economic activity. The quiet work of the market also reflects broader social structures. Elders often oversee transactions, ensuring fairness and mediating disputes. Reputation matters. A farmer known for careful preparation and honesty in measurement will attract more buyers and foster trust within the community. Conversely, inconsistent practices can result in reduced trade opportunities or subtle social sanctions. In this way, the mundane routines of counting, inspecting, and exchanging beans reinforce both economic stability and social cohesion. Daily survival in this system is intricately linked to discipline and timing. Beans must be harvested, fermented, dried, and transported in alignment with the rhythms of weather, labor, availability, and market schedules. Even minor delays, overripe pods, Unexpected rainfall or miscommunication among traders can ripple outward, affecting household provisioning and community needs. The quiet attention to daily tasks ensures that goods flow predictably through the market, allowing both individuals and the broader village to plan and survive. Markets also serve as nodes of knowledge exchange. Conversations at the stalls extend beyond trade. Farmers discuss planting techniques, fermentation tips, or weather observations. Novices learn through observation, seeing how experienced traders weigh, measure, and assess beans, while elders subtly transmit social norms and expectations about honesty, patience, and communal responsibility. Through repetition and attention to detail, the market functions as an informal classroom, a hub where survival, culture, and socialization intersect. The work in the market is physically demanding but rhythmically predictable. Carrying baskets of beans, crouching to inspect goods, negotiating exchanges, and returning home requires coordination, strength, and attentiveness. Yet there is a subtle satisfaction in the repetition. Each movement, repeated daily, contributes to household stability, community cohesion, and the predictable flow of resources. Even the seemingly boring tasks counting, arranging, negotiating are central to sustaining life and embedding knowledge. Interestingly, environmental conditions are constantly encoded in market routines. Rain or sun affects the transport and storage of beans. Seasonal changes influence supply and demand, and subtle cues in the aroma and appearance of cacao reflect harvest timing and quality. Farmers and traders, through repeated sensory evaluation, develop nuanced strategies to mitigate risk and optimize trade. The everyday handling of cacao becomes both a survival tool and a repository of practical knowledge, linking ordinary labor with adaptive expertise. Yet, despite the predictability of routine, uncertainties persist. Weather fluctuations, pest outbreaks, or social conflicts can disrupt the market flow. The villagers' reliance on careful observation, sensory evaluation, and adherence to ritualized preparation routines ensures resilience. By embedding knowledge in repetitive practices, the Maya maintain coherence in their economic and social systems, even amidst environmental and social variability. As the day progresses and the market activity winds down, the significance of the morning's quiet labor becomes clear. Cacao beans, carefully cultivated and prepared, have been transformed into units of survival, knowledge, and social connection. The routine inspections, negotiations, and exchanges, though outwardly mundane, encode both economic intelligence and communal norms. The work may appear ordinary, yet it sustains life, structures society, and embeds cultural continuity in each being, each transaction, and each interaction. And as you step back from the market, watching villagers carefully pack unsold beans for later use or trade, an unresolved thought remains. How did these daily routines, repeated countless times, influenced broader patterns of regional trade, resource distribution, and social networks? How did the quiet labor of ordinary villagers shape the resilience and interconnectedness of Maya communities over generations? These questions linger, inviting deeper exploration in the next section. As the morning sun rises higher, the village market transforms from a collection of scattered mats and baskets into a coordinated network of trade and observation. Each stall, each vendor, and each buyer is engaged in a rhythm that appears mundane but is essential for survival. You notice that the value of cacao extends beyond its use as a commodity. It is a tool for communication, coordination, and the management of both risk and resources. Farmers carefully track the provenance and quality of their beans. The size, color, and sheen of each cacao bean is recorded in memory, as is its journey from grove to fermentation, drying, and roasting. These details are not trivial. They are indicators of quality, ripeness, and readiness, and they guide decision-making in real time. Buyers, similarly attuned to subtle sensory cues, assess beans with practiced precision, negotiating based on tactile feel, aroma, and appearance. The sensory literacy developed through daily preparation and observation ensures accuracy in trade, minimizes disputes, and maintains trust within the market. The Maya barter system relies on more than the quality of beans. Timing and coordination are equally crucial. Farmers must align their harvest and market trips with environmental cycles, such as rainfall patterns or periods of peak pod ripeness. Traders must synchronize exchanges between villages, ensuring that goods arrive in a timely manner and that each party receives fair compensation. This intricate scheduling is facilitated by the collective knowledge embedded in daily routines, counting beans, observing fermentation progress, and tracking environmental conditions. In this way, the market functions as both economic engine and information network, where ordinary practices transmit critical knowledge. Market routines are also central to social cohesion. Experienced traders and elders mediate exchanges, enforcing fairness and establishing norms of trust. Reputation is a form of currency. Farmers known for careful cultivation, consistent quality, and honest measurement attract repeat buyers, while those who cut corners face diminished credibility. Social expectations and economic activity are deeply intertwined, with routine practices reinforcing communal norms and teaching younger participants the behavioral codes required for long-term success. The repetition of mundane activities, counting, arranging, inspecting thus becomes a mechanism for social education and cultural continuity. Economic resilience is cultivated through careful observation and adaptive strategies. Environmental variability, unexpected rain, pest outbreaks, or delayed harvest scan threaten the flow of beans to market. In response, farmers adjust quantities, stagger sales, and even reserve extra beans for barter or household consumption. The daily routines of selection, fermentation, and inspection function as risk management tools, ensuring that households can navigate variability without catastrophic loss. The seemingly boring, repetitive labor is therefore a deliberate, empirical practice that balances immediate survival with long-term planning. The market also serves as a site of knowledge transfer and innovation. Observing trade interactions, novices learn the subtleties of negotiation, the sensory cues that indicate quality, and strategies for resource management. Farmers share practical insights about fermentation techniques, storage methods, and environmental adaptations. These exchanges, embedded in routine market activity, create a network of shared knowledge that strengthens the resilience and adaptability of the community. The ordinary work of buying, selling, and inspecting beans thus becomes a vehicle for cumulative learning and skill development. Interestingly, the tactile and sensory nature of the work connects villagers to both the environment and the rhythms of production. The weight of a basket, the smoothness of a bean, the fragrance of fermented cacao provide information about quality, timing, and readiness. These cues, interpreted through repetition and experience, enable precise decision-making without the need for formal measurement tools. In this way, the Maya market exemplifies an empirical, observation-based system where practical knowledge is encoded in routine, sensory engagement, and subtle gestures. Even minor variations are meaningful. A slightly over-dried bean, an uneven batch, or a delayed harvest can trigger adjustments in allocation, barter terms, or ceremonial use. The responsiveness of the system is facilitated by the routines established in daily life, observation, counting, and sensory evaluation. The repetition of mundane tasks, from arranging beans on mats to negotiating exchange rates, forms the foundation for resilience, continuity, and adaptability within the village economy. As afternoon approaches and the market activity gradually slows, the broader significance of these quiet routines becomes evident. The daily practices of farmers, traders, and households are not merely about exchanging goods. They are about sustaining life, encoding knowledge, and maintaining social order. Each bean, inspected, counted, and allocated, carries with it the accumulated expertise of generations. The mundane labor of markets becomes a form of cultural infrastructure, ensuring both survival and cohesion in a variable environment. Unresolved questions linger. How did these village-level practices influence larger regional trade networks? How did the routines and sensory knowledge cultivated in daily markets affect inter-community cooperation, conflict resolution, and the development of economic institutions? How did the integration of ritual, commerce, and observation shape the broader resilience of Maya civilization? These are questions that await the final section of the story, where the quiet work of cacao markets reveals its enduring leg. As the day winds down and the sun casts long shadows over the village plaza, the market gradually empties. Vendors pack unsold cacao beans into baskets, traders tally exchanges, and households carry provisions home. The rhythm of the market, quiet and methodical, has shaped not only the day but the broader survival strategies of the community. Through repetition, observation, and routine, the mundane tasks of counting, inspecting, and negotiating have created a resilient network of knowledge, social order, and economic stability. The significance of these routines becomes evident when considering the many uncertainties of Maya life. Environmental variability, such as uneven rainfall, pest infestations, or unpredictable harvests could disrupt food security. Political tensions or inter-village disputes might threaten trade relationships. Yet the repetitive, disciplined labor embedded in market routines ensures continuity. Careful observation, quality assessment, and knowledge of timing allow villagers to respond flexibly, adapting allocations, adjusting barter strategies, and maintaining household and communal stability. The seemingly boring attention to detail is a critical survival mechanism. Markets also reinforce social cohesion and hierarchy. Experienced traders and elders supervise exchanges, providing oversight and mediating disagreements. Reputation functions as a social regulator. Those who consistently deliver high-quality beans and fair trade earn trust, while those who cut corners risk marginalization. Younger participants learn not only technical skills, but also the moral and social codes that underpin communal life. The repetition of routine, combined with guidance and observation, ensures that both practical knowledge and cultural norms are transmitted reliably across generations. Trade networks extend beyond the village, linking communities through shared standards of cacao quality and preparation. Traders carry carefully selected beans to neighboring settlements, where their sensory attribute size, texture, aroma, and color communicate essential information about quality and origin. These exchanges, grounded in tacit knowledge and practiced observation, form a system of communication and coordination without formal writing or numerical accounting. It is a testament to the sophistication of Maya knowledge systems that survival and cooperation could be maintained through such seemingly ordinary practices. The market's role in ritual and ceremonial life further amplifies its importance. Beans designated for sacred use are carefully segregated, tracked, and prepared according to long-standing traditions. Timing, quality, and presentation are all critical, ensuring alignment with environmental cycles, social obligations, and religious observances. The mundane labor of selection, counting, and transport thus directly supports the spiritual and cultural continuity of the community. Everyday work and ritual practice are interwoven, illustrating how ordinary routines can sustain both material and symbolic life. Moreover, the cumulative impact of these daily practices extends to resilience at a regional level. Coordination across villages, synchronized trading schedules, shared standards of bean quality, and mutual observation of environmental conditions creates networks of interdependence. Communities capable of maintaining these routines can buffer against local shortages, exchange knowledge, and foster trust. In this sense, the quiet work of cacao markets is both microcosm and infrastructure. It sustains households while simultaneously enabling the survival and cohesion of the broader society. Through these practices, ordinary labor is transformed into expertise, memory, and strategy. The repetitive inspection of beans, negotiation of barter, and careful transport encode empirical knowledge about quality, timing, and environmental conditions. Children and novices learn not through instruction alone, but through participation, observation, and repetition, ensuring that skills and social norms persist. Over generations, these mundane routines accumulate into a sophisticated, adaptive system capable of sustaining life, regulating social order, and connecting communities across the landscape. Even as the market closes, questions remain, quietly lingering like the last scent of roasted cacao. How did these everyday practices shape larger patterns of Maya commerce and social networks? How did the cumulative knowledge embedded in daily routines contribute to the resilience and longevity of Maya civilization? And perhaps most intriguingly, what can the quiet, methodical work of ordinary villagers teach us about the power of repetition, observation, and disciplined labor in sustaining societies, both past and present? The quiet work of cacao markets though outwardly mundane, exemplifies the profound impact of routine, sensory engagement, and meticulous attention to detail. In the seemingly boring act of counting, inspecting, and trading beans, the Maya created systems of survival, knowledge, and social cohesion that endured across generations, reminding us that the ordinary often underpins the extraordinary, sustaining life and community in ways that are easy to overlook, yet impossible to overstate. The first light of dawn brushes across the Maya village, illuminating groves of cacao trees whose broad leaves glisten with dew. You would notice a quiet rhythm already established. Families rise, farmers walk to their fields, and women prepare tools and containers for the day's work. At the heart of this daily rhythm lies cacao, not merely as a source of food or trade, but as a subtle measure of time, a marker of daily and seasonal cycles, and a tool for structuring community life. Cacao cultivation demands patience, observation, and an understanding of slow, predictable processes. Pods take months to mature, fermentation requires days of careful monitoring, and drying and roasting can be disrupted by the slightest change in weather. Each step is bound to natural rhythms, and in attending to them, the Maya cultivate a temporal awareness grounded in practical labor. Daily activities are calibrated against the readiness of cacao, with schedules and routines evolving around the stages of bean maturation. Time is thus experienced, not abstractly, but through the unfolding life of the plant, the texture of beans, and the sensory cues embedded in preparation. Farmers and household members track these subtle changes meticulously. The color of a pod, the aroma of fermenting beans, or the slight change in texture signals readiness for the next step. Such observation forms an informal calendar, where the ordinary becomes extraordinary. The slow ripening of cacao informs labor planning, ritual timing, and trade schedules. Villagers learn to measure days, anticipate tasks, and coordinate activities, not with clocks, but through careful attention to the living rhythms of cacao. The role of cacao extends beyond agricultural management. Daily preparation, routines, selection, roasting, grinding, and brewing structure domestic life, teaching patience, attention to detail, and procedural discipline. These routines also serve as a form of temporal calibration. The time it takes to roast a batch, the repeated stirring to produce foam, the intervals between grinding and mixing all mark the progression of the day and orient household activities. In this way, cacao functions as a temporal anchor, embedding awareness of duration and sequence within ordinary labor. Community life is similarly organized around cacao. Shared rituals, markets, and labor tasks depend on the timing and quality of the beans. Festivals are scheduled to coincide with optimal ripeness. Market exchanges rely on predictably prepared cacao. Communal gatherings synchronize around the availability of ceremonial batches. Each interaction, each meeting, is coordinated through rhythms established by cacao cultivation and preparation. The ordinary bean, therefore, becomes a tool for social cohesion, linking households and villages in networks of shared knowledge, labor, and ritual observance. This temporal structuring carries lessons in patience and long-term thinking. A farmer cannot rush a pod to maturity, nor can a household accelerate fermentation without risking spoilage. Each step demands careful attention and respect for natural processes. The cultivation of patience is reinforced daily through repetitive, sensory-rich tasks that teach both skill and self-discipline. Children observe and participate, internalizing these lessons while acquiring practical knowledge. Over time, patience becomes a shared cultural value, encoded in both the routines of labor and the rhythms of communal life. The cumulative effect of cacao on timekeeping and community coordination is subtle but profound. By attending to the slow, observable changes in beans, villagers synchronize labor, ritual, and social interaction. The ordinary acts of daily preparation, repeated consistently over generations, encode knowledge of seasonal cycles, environmental conditions, and social norms. Time becomes tangible, measured not by abstract markers, but by sensory engagement and disciplined observation. Yet, this system is not without its challenges. Environmental fluctuations, unexpected rainfall, drought, or pest infestations can disrupt anticipated schedules. Household labor availability, market demands, or ceremonial obligations may necessitate adjustments. Here, the careful routines established through cacao handling provide the necessary flexibility. Observation, repetition, and cumulative experience allow the community to adapt without losing coherence. The mundane, repeated tasks of cacao cultivation and preparation thus form the backbone of resilience, ensuring that both individuals and the broader society can navigate uncertainty. The quiet power of cacao in structuring daily life also underscores its role in teaching generational continuity. Skills, observation techniques, and social norms are transmitted through participation, imitation, and supervision. Children learn to recognize subtle cues, track processes over time, and coordinate their activities with household and village schedules. The slow, deliberate work associated with cacao becomes a conduit for cultural memory, preserving knowledge about agricultural techniques, environmental awareness, and social organization across generations. And yet, as you observe the village moving through its morning routines, questions linger. How did the lessons learned from cacao influence broader cultural practices, such as ceremonial calendars or inter-village coordination? How did the integration of patience, sensory observation, and routine labor shape social expectations and communal resilience? How did a simple agricultural product become so deeply embedded in the structures of time, labor, and human relationships? Even in this first stage, the influence of cacao is clear. It structures the day, teaches patience, coordinates households and communities, and encodes knowledge that sustains life. In the careful handling of each bean, in the repetitive, mindful labor of preparation, the Maya found a rhythm that connected the ordinary to the extraordinary, the mundane to the enduring, and daily survival to cultural continuity. As the morning progresses, the village moves through the rhythm established by cacao, and the influence of this humble being becomes increasingly evident. Daily preparation and observation are more than domestic chores. They are instruments of social coordination, cultural continuity, and subtle timekeeping. Every stage, from selecting the right pods to roasting and grinding, reinforces skills, routines, and awareness of natural and social cycles. The sensory engagement required in cacao preparation is central to the education of younger villagers. Children watch and imitate elders, learning to recognize subtle cues in pod color, bean texture, and foam consistency. Through repetition, they internalize both technical skills and social norms, understanding the value of patience, precision, and attentiveness. The lessons extend beyond chocolate making. The ability to observe carefully, to follow sequence, and to anticipate outcomes becomes a transferable skill, applicable in farming, trade, and ritual life. Labor and ritual are intertwined. Ceremonial consumption of cacao requires that beans be carefully prepared, timing coordinated with environmental and celestial cycles, and presentation executed with attention to detail. Daily routines reinforce ceremonial discipline, the same observational skills applied to roasting, grinding, and mixing inform decisions about ritual readiness, allocation of resources, and timing of offerings. In this way, mundane labor is inseparable from social and spiritual structure. Ordinary acts, counting, stirring, assessing beans, become markers of communal coherence and cultural continuity. Timekeeping, in particular, is deeply encoded in cacao practices. Farmers track the stages of pod ripeness, the progression of fermentation, and the drying period of beans, creating a natural calendar grounded in observation and experience. These cycles are integrated with household schedules, market timing, and ritual planning. The repetition of daily labor reinforces temporal awareness, making the passage of time tangible and measurable through practical, sensory engagement rather than abstract notation. In essence, cacao provides a living clock, shaping the rhythm of daily life and long-term planning. The social dimension of cacao work is equally significant. Cooperation is required at nearly every stage: harvesting pods, fermenting beans, preparing chocolate, and distributing portions for trade or ritual use. The success of these tasks relies on communication, observation, and adherence to communal standards. Social cohesion is reinforced by the routines themselves, as repeated participation instills shared expectations and mutual accountability. Reputation, trust, and reliability, both within households and across villages, are sustained through careful adherence to these ordinary but essential practices. Economic life, too, depends on the regularity of cacao routines. Beans prepared in households or groves are traded at markets, where sensory evaluation determines value. Timing, quality, and quantity all influence the success of transactions. Through repetitive engagement with cacao, villagers cultivate expertise in both production and exchange, allowing households to navigate scarcity, surpluses, and environmental unpredictability. The mundane work of preparation and observation becomes the foundation for economic resilience, linking individual labor with communal stability. The adaptability of this system is remarkable. Environmental variability, such as fluctuating rainfall, unexpected frosts, or pest infestations, requires constant attention and recalibration. Social shifts, labor shortages, market demand, or ceremonial needs demand flexibility. Yet, the disciplined routines surrounding cacao provide the tools for adaptation. By repeating observed techniques, comparing sensory cues, and adjusting allocations, the Maya develop both resilience and continuity. Ordinary repetition becomes a strategy for survival and cultural transmission at the same time. patience, and attentiveness cultivated through cacao labor extend beyond practical necessity. They shape communal behavior, instilling values of careful observation, respect for natural processes, and mindfulness in action. Children internalize these lessons, elders model them, and households collectively reinforce them. Over generations, the slow, deliberate work associated with cacao strengthens not only technical skills but also social cohesion, moral instruction, and temporal awareness. Yet, questions persist as the day unfolds. How did these daily practices influence broader calendrical systems, ceremonial structures, or intercommunity coordination? How did the cultivation of patience, observation, and disciplined labor inform other aspects of Maya governance, agriculture, or cultural identity? How did such boring yet essential routines shape the resilience and adaptability of entire communities over centuries? Even in this second section, the significance of cacao is clear. It structures daily labor, informs timekeeping, coordinates households and communities, and encodes practical and social knowledge that endures across generations. Through the ordinary, repeated, and sensory-rich practices surrounding cacao, the Maya cultivated a rhythm of life that linked labor, ritual, and communal identity in ways both subtle and profound. As the sun begins its descent and the village settles into the slower rhythm of afternoon and evening, the influence of cacao on daily life becomes fully apparent. What began as careful observation and labor in the groves has shaped not only household routines but also the broader temporal and social structure of the community. Cacao, humble yet profound, functions as a medium through which time is measured, social order maintained, and cultural knowledge transmitted across generations. The culmination of daily routines, the harvesting of pods, fermentation of beans, roasting, grinding, and ceremonial preparations serves as both a practical and symbolic anchor. Each step reinforces the skills, attention, and patience required for survival. By engaging repeatedly with these processes, villagers develop an acute awareness of natural cycles, environmental conditions, and social expectations. Time, measured not in abstract units, but in sensory cues, task sequences, and labor rhythms, becomes tangible and meaningful. Community cohesion is similarly reinforced. The daily preparation of cacao and the sharing or trading of its products requires cooperation and trust. Households coordinate labor, monitor quality, and transmit knowledge through example and participation. Rituals and markets, structured around cacao, create predictable social rhythms, embedding values such as honesty, patience, and mutual responsibility. Even minor deviations, an over-roasted batch, a miscounted trade, or delayed fermentation prompt adjustments and recalibration, ensuring that knowledge, trust, and resources are preserved. The repetition of mundane tasks thus becomes a social glue, maintaining harmony and continuity across households and generations. Cacao's influence extends beyond the village, connecting communities through trade, ceremonial exchange, and shared agricultural practices. Regional networks of barter and exchange rely on the predictability and quality of cacao preparation. Sensory literacy, the ability to assess beans by appearance, texture, and aroma, ensures fair trade and reinforces inter-village trust. In this way, the seemingly ordinary labor of individual households contributes to larger systems of cooperation, resilience, and information sharing. The slow, methodical work required to cultivate and prepare cacao also instills cultural values that endure across generations. Patience, attentiveness, and respect for natural processes become embedded in daily routines. Children, observing and participating, internalize these lessons, while elders reinforce them through guidance and example. Over time, the cumulative effect of repeated practice shapes not only technical competence, but also social norms, moral behavior, and an embodied sense of temporal awareness. The mundane becomes the mechanism through which knowledge, culture, and resilience are transmitted. Cacao, then, is both a commodity and a teacher. Its cultivation and preparation encode empirical knowledge, social expectations, and temporal awareness. By attending carefully to its slow rhythms, the Maya learned to measure time, coordinate labor, manage risk, and maintain communal harmony. Repetition, observation, and discipline, though outwardly boring, formed the foundation of adaptive expertise that allowed villages to survive and thrive amid environmental uncertainty and social complexity. As evening falls, the lessons of cacao extend beyond its immediate utility. They reveal the quiet power of routine, the extraordinary potential of ordinary labor, and the subtle ways in which cultural knowledge is preserved and transmitted. In the careful handling of each bean, the patient monitoring of fermentation, and the methodical preparation of chocolate, the Maya discovered a rhythm that connected daily survival, social cohesion, and cultural continuity. And so, the story concludes with a reflection in the seemingly mundane acts of observation, labor, and preparation. The Maya encoded resilience, knowledge, and social order. The quiet work of cacao counting, roasting, grinding, stirring, and sharing demonstrates that the ordinary, when approached with care, patience, and attention, can shape the extraordinary. Time is measured not by clocks or monuments, but by the rhythms of daily life, the slow unfolding of natural processes, and the disciplined, repeated work of human hands. Through cacao, the Maya found a way to align labor, ritual, and communal life. They transformed patience into knowledge, repetition into resilience, and the mundane into a framework for survival, social cohesion, and cultural endurance. Even now, as we observe their practices, we can recognize how deeply the ordinary shapes human experience, and how quietly, yet profoundly, daily routines leave their mark on history. And so, our journey through the quiet corners of history comes to a pause. The workshops, the libraries, the hands that labored patiently, they remain in memory. Even as centuries pass and the world continues to change, remember, the significance of history often lies not in grand events, but in the small, persistent acts of care, curiosity, and human resilience. As you rest, carry these quiet stories with you, allowing the calm rhythms of the past to linger. And when you wake, perhaps you will glimpse, even briefly, the enduring power of ordinary moments that shaped our world. Thank you for joining us in Boring Past Times for Sleep. Until the next quiet journey, may your thoughts drift gently like candlelight across ancient parchment.